welcome to another episode of the Silver Track Extra, where we give you the tools, tips, and tricks to improve your guard management, retain more customers, and gain the upper hand against your competitors. Here are your hosts, Chris Anderson and Johnny Page.
What's up, Silvertrack Nation? Johnny Page here and Chris Anderson back after the holidays. Excited to be bringing you some fresh new content here from our team at Silvertrack. Today we're going to be tackling episode 92, where we're going to talk about the dangers of slipping security reports under the customer's door. So Chris, you'd be shocked. You wouldn't be shocked at all, but I think our listeners would be shocked to find this is an incredibly common practice in the security industry. And so basically, just to give a little background, we'll get calls from time to time, or I feel like it's almost on a weekly basis, where they say, hey, we're interested in your software. And then I ask, so a typical question that I would ask is, how is your existing reporting process going? Tell me what the operation looks like now. And it's incredibly common that the officer is writing a report on site. And then, so maybe sometimes if it's let's say a bump up from the standard would be that they're writing it on 2-ply paper and then sliding it under the door. So then our supervisors have a copy, the customer has a copy, but more often than not, it's just a written report being slipped under the door or put in the mailbox, and it's going without even being seen by a supervisor. It's just given directly to the customer. So Chris, there's obviously a number of problems with this operation. So let's kick things off, Chris. What's the number one danger in slipping the security report under the customer's door?
I have to laugh, because if anybody's still doing it, number one, if you can even get a report under the door anymore, that's fantastic, right? Without crumbling it, the way security is today. That is so far behind the time. Were these guys on horseback that you talked to, John?
No, they did send a telegram. That could have been Yeah, that should have been my first sign. No, surprisingly, they probably call on their smartphone, having all the tools and technology to eliminate that process. But sure enough, and we're not talking about like podunk mom and pop shops. We're talking about quality, or at least operation that has quite a few officers. It's pretty standard, anywhere from 100, 200, 300, I've even up to 500 officers, of that being the standard. And then sometimes they'll couple that with a DEGI tool, right, where they're going to download the times that they're doing the tours. But either way, a pretty antiquated way of going about it.
I would say, I'm probably the first one out with real-time reporting. In fact, I consider myself the first one that came out with real-time reporting on the market. And then, trust me, I didn't get out and decide, hey, let's go put all these in mobile devices and spend more money, because I thought this was a better way of doing it. But the problem came from all these reports. I mean, think about it. They're poor written, right? We're going to go through them today. Rounded off times, all these things. Guards could never write a decent report, spell it correctly without writing or using a crayon. Sometimes they take their own paper versus the daily activity report because they failed to show up in the office, right? So they'd be writing on the back of a receipt. Unbelievable stories, John.
Yeah. So I think overall, the number one danger is that there's very low accountability when you're doing this. So if this is something that your company's doing, it's pretty consistent to see poor handwriting on the written reports, poor grammar, or just not really being able to understand what they're saying in the written report. Like you said, Chris, rounded off time. So I can't even tell you, even operations that are doing this digitally, when you're hand writing the report, the chances that it's actually being written while the activity is being done or throughout the shift are pretty slim, because you always see, if the shifts, we'll see 0900, 0100, right? And then they're going through the shifts, like every hour they're writing out the time, they're just making an entry, all is well, all is secured.
Yeah, but nobody keeps a notebook, right? So the idea of a notebook was to write down the times, and then when you had a minute to take a break and then fill in your daily activity report. But it never happens that way. You're right. They round off the times. Number one, Or number two, it's a brand new account. They're not familiar with the property. They don't know the building numbers or the building addresses. They forget the person's name. All the information that's critical to the manager or the client to make a decision in the morning by reading the report, they can't get.
Yeah.
Right? It's just out the door.
Yeah. So then we get some inaccuracies in the report. It's not really something that we can rely on to go back and say, hey, was the officer actually doing their job? And then, there's one risk is the officer can pre-write the report and then go home a couple hours early, right? Slip it under the door, go home a couple hours early.
Everybody did that. On top of that, it would have a Taco Bell hot sauce stain while he was eating it. He dripped it on the corner of the paper, and he goes, he brushes it off. Oh, I think that's okay. It's kind of like his uniform, right?
Yeah.
Clients calling me up. I think your guard was bleeding last night. It was all over the place. Is he okay? And
nope.
No, I called
that's
him
some
up.
fire sauce.
That's some fire sauce from Taco Bell right there.
Yeah. So I think the second danger is that there's just very low quality assurance. If you think about this from your customer's perspective, sure, they may not say anything and it may be okay for them. The reason they've probably made the exception to just get the report slipped under the door is because it's either that or it goes to your supervisor and it could be a couple days before they get the report. So they're choosing the timeliness of the report over maybe a higher quality report. But what does it really say about your company if your supervision or management never really see the report, or if they see it after your customer sees it? There's very little quality assurance involved in that you're waiting for the customer to complain to address any performance issues with the officers. Yep. And that's just not a good way. That puts the burden of quality assurance on your customer versus placing that on the management staff. So I just think as a whole it's pretty unprofessional way to operate. It may have been acceptable 5, 10, 15 years ago. But now I think it's just the standard in the industry has been risen. So overall, it's just a pretty unprofessional way to operate.
Well, Silvertrack Nation, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors over at Paperless Proposal. We've all been there before. You put countless hours into a proposal, painstakingly nitpicked every last detail until you finally finish and click send. Then you spend the next several days thinking, did they get it? Did they like it? Have they even read it yet? Well, with Paperless Proposal, those worries are gone. Not only can you actually see when your prospect views your proposal, but you can see what pages they look at, how long they look at them, and who they forward the proposal to. All of these analytics help you gain valuable insight into how your prospective clients view and interact with your proposal, giving your sales team important data to close more contracts. So what are you waiting for? Head over to paperlessproposal.com/Silvertrack to get a free demo and take advantage of a special offer just for our listeners. Now, let's get back to our featured conversation.
You'll find today, and you and I both know this, majority of guys are still doing paper. You see a lot of guys in Northern California or in the country, in their mountains, that are still behind the times. Obviously, they're doing smaller inspections for small commercial properties, maybe an alarm response or something like that. But you're going to find, too, that the majority of those guys writing the report still are actual owners that are still working the car because they couldn't put an employee in the car to write the paper. So they're doing their own job just to keep their own contracts. And they're very small, right? They have no room for growth, and they're just doing the minimums. They really are. And that's a lot of the guys, I think, today that are doing this, you're going to find that are upper management that are just got a small security business because you just can't keep it any other way. Just not today. Not today. No
yeah,
way.
I agree. And I think the third danger here in slipping security reports under the door is that we lose out on the value of data. So when we're doing written reports and just slipping them under the door, it really, aside from information that's passed on from word of mouth or from a supervisor who's been working that property, or an account manager who's had responsibility to that property for year after year, aside from that, the value of that, we really lose out on being able to track the number of times certain incidents happen, or any trends on the property, or just being able to summarize our productivity to the customer, or really prove the value excuse me, prove the value of our operation, because we're not tracking any of that data. And it's all done in a handwritten report. And really what this is saying is we're just here to accomplish the bare minimum. Like, was there enough in there? We're not like hunting down ways to contribute more value or to critique the security program to make sure it's really addressing their biggest problems. We're really just seen as a vendor at this point. If you're continue to just slip the report under the door, you're not tracking data and attempting to contribute to their overall operation or improve your services, now you're just a vendor, and so you better have the lowest price, because someone else is going to come in the door and either have a lower price or offer higher accountability, better quality assurance, and data that supports their operation moving forward, and you'll lose the contract.
Yeah, and here's how they lose it, John. Here's what it is. Somebody that's traditionally using paper right now has got a pretty good relationship typically with the manager or that person working at that location, right? So what happens is you're doing the paperwork, everything's going fine, and all of a sudden a major incident occurs where corporate or somebody above that person at that location contacts them to say, send me your reports. Right?
Yeah.
And then they look at them and they go, you're kidding me. You've been doing these reports you've been taking this, there's no information here, because reports get weaker and weaker. If the client's not calling you and complaining, everybody just assumes it's okay what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then the times change. Now it's 97, everything will code 4, nothing unusual to report, right? So
yeah.
If it comes to a major incident, you're going to get in trouble. And then number 2, you guys need to think about, if you're doing this out there, where you're storing your reports. I bet you've got a room right now with about 15 boxes full of reports, because technically you got to save them for 5 to 7 years. So I've known guys that have to have storage facilities just full of boxes of daily activity reports. So clean up your rooms. Get rid of it.
Or they're leaving, when you're slipping it under the customer's door, they're getting the email, the customer's scanning it in and emailing it over to the company.
Right.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, kudos to you for 5 years ago, 10 years ago, being able to outsource some of your admin work to your customer, like having them do it for free. The fact that you could get them to do that in the first place, hey, kudos to you, but not a good way to operate moving forward. 2 years from now, even 6 months from now, you may not have the contract just because the standard has changed. So let's have a conversation. We help companies make this transition every week, every day. This is what Silvertrack is dedicated to doing. And so we'd love to have a conversation with you. So if you'll visit silvertracksoftware.com/92, you can see all the notes and the dangers that we see in slipping the security reports under the door. But then you can also request a demo, and Chris, myself, or one of our other product specialists will have a conversation with you just to learn more about your operation and then help you understand what the transition will look like. There's no harm in just finding out what it would look like to be using a tool like Silvertrack. We're not going to sick some used car salesman on you that's going to hammer your phones until you close the deal. It's just going to be a nice discovery process that would help you start looking into resolving and avoiding some of the dangers that we've talked about today. So, Chris, anything else to add before we wrap up episode 92?
No, I think you said it all. And, the client's got to remember, we've been in the industry for 25 plus years. We ran a business. We were managers. We did this. We understand your pain. You guys don't be scared to make the change. It's not that difficult. Like John said, just give us a call.
Yeah, sure. And one other thing you can check out, we have some episodes, what we call like a customer spotlight. I think we've got 6 or 7 of them now, where some of our customers have came on the Silvertrack Extra and shared about their transition. So they shared about the problems they were trying to solve, like eliminating paper or increasing accountability or becoming more competitive in their market. And they talk about the tools that they considered, their buying process, what were the things that they valued, and then when they ultimately decided to use Silvertrack, what did the onboarding process look like, and what was their customers' reaction once they started seeing the reports coming from Silvertrack rather than handwritten reports or from some other tool. So some cool episodes there. If you go to silvertracksoftware.com/extra, you'll see in the right-hand column a category called Customer Spotlight, and you'll see all the episodes that we've done where you actually get to hear from our customers how they made this transition. So, Chris, I think enough of the sales pitch here. We don't want to be too, biased. Of course, we're passionate about the solution we solve, but I think we've wrapped up enough here for episode number 92. So until next time, my name's Johnny Page.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
This is the Silvertrack Extra, and we'll see you on episode 93.